Hello, happy Friday. I can't tell if it was a week that went by really slowly or really quickly. I guess it depends on the minute. But my son, he unfortunately was sick in the beginning of the week, had a fever and a cough and missed a couple of days of school. I guess it's not too bad considering I think this is the first time he missed school due to illness. So that's not too bad, right? And my daughter turned 15 this week. I have a 15-year-old. It's like crazy to me that I have a daughter who's 15, and in a couple of months I'm gonna have 2 teenagers, which is it just blows my mind. Like I just don't know where the time has gone. And I don't know. I did get a haircut. If you know me, I have a lot of hair and it was super, super long, and I get it cut twice a year. So this week was my 1 out of 2 times. And I feel like I lost a couple of pounds because I feel a little lighter now without several inches of my hair pulling me down. But anyway, that's really not why I came on to talk today about my hair and my daughter's birthday, although that's exciting, and my son being sick, and thankfully he's better. But I did come on today to talk about tantrums. If you don't know me or you don't know me well, my name is Jessica Silverman. I am the owner of Parenting with Clarity and the admin for the group Insightful Parents. And I help parents discover positive and effective ways to end power struggles, support the development of important life skills, and just enjoy parenting more. So in my group, Insightful Parents, one of the moms asked a question, and she wanted to know what I would suggest as a constructive way to treat a tantrum. So I think we've all experienced a tantrum, either one that we've had ourselves or our child has had a tantrum. And I just was curious. I Googled tantrum, and one of the definitions is an uncontrolled outburst of anger and frustration, typically in a young child. So I think we often do think of tantrums occurring in those younger years when our children in that toddler and preschool age. And I totally get that. It does happen a lot in those years, but really they can happen at any time. School age, teenage years, adults, like we can have tantrums too. And before I go into what my thoughts are on tantrums, I also want to talk about the difference that I see between a meltdown and a tantrum. Sometimes those words are used interchangeably, but I do see them as different. So a meltdown usually occurs when a child is feeling depleted, is exhausted, is tired, or maybe feels overwhelmed by the sensory input in their environment. So a meltdown, think of going to Target with your child when he is just exhausted, hasn't had a nap, or has been running around all day, maybe was only noshing on snacks and didn't have a full meal and is hungry. Or maybe your child in that kind of environment feels really overwhelmed by maybe the brightness of the lights or all the sounds that are going on, or all the people bumping into them, and just feels totally overwhelmed and just loses it and has a total meltdown. And that can look a lot like a tantrum, right? It can look the same. Now, a tantrum, on the other hand, I see as an outburst that occurs when a child isn't getting what he wants or what she wants. Maybe it's like the blue cup, or maybe you cut the banana wrong and he didn't want you to cut it, or your child sees a toy at the store and isn't able to have it, has to stop playing with a toy because it's time to go somewhere, something that your child wants and doesn't get it. And typically with a tantrum, if you give your child what he's screaming and crying about, typically it ends. So you give your child the blue cup, you find another banana that's not cut, you give the toy off the shelf. Typically the tantrum ends, the behavior ends, the outburst ends. Whereas if you hand your child the blue cup during a meltdown, oftentimes that cup gets thrown back at you because it's really not about the cup, right? Does that make sense? Let me know. Does that make sense to you? So right now I'm going to focus on the tantrum. I'm going to focus on those outbursts, those behaviors that occur when your child wants something and isn't getting it. And one thing I want to mention is I think oftentimes when we see a child experiencing a tantrum, oftentimes people are labeling the child as bad or spoiled or whatever adjective comes to mind, and it's usually not a positive one. I think that is a myth. First of all, those are judgments. They're not truths. They're judgments that we place on the children. And the way I see a tantrum is just a behavior that results from frustration or disappointment. It doesn't mean anything about your child's character. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. Things that I find that aren't helpful when your child is in the middle of a tantrum is telling your child to calm down. I don't think any of us really calm down when we're told to. If it were that easy, I think we'd all do it, right? If it were that easy to just say, calm down, that would be amazing, right? But it doesn't seem to work. And sometimes it can make things worse, like, telling a child to calm down. So that doesn't work. Or yelling back at the child, even though it can be so tempting, right? But it doesn't seem, in my experience, to be terribly effective or terribly helpful. And if we try to reason with our children in those moments, what's the difference between the cut banana and the whole banana? It's the same thing, but your child doesn't see it that way. So, trying to reason with a child or a person who is not acting rational doesn't help. Telling our children to calm down, unfortunately, does not help. And even though giving in may stop the tantrum, in the long run, that doesn't help. Our children are super smart. If they've learned that they yell 50 times, but the 51st time they yell, you're gonna give them what they want, they're gonna keep on going. Or maybe at a certain volume you give into their demand. They're gonna learn that. They're gonna to know that, okay, well, if I just say it louder, or I just whine longer, or I just say it enough times, mommy's gonna give me what I want. So even though that might be a short-term solution, in the long run, it really doesn't help. So, okay, I've talked enough about what isn't terribly effective. So what are my recommendations for what to do instead? All right, so I think of a tantrum as kind of like a storm and can feel like a tornado sometimes, right? They can be loud, they can be scary, they can be destructive, things can be thrown all around, right? Kind of like a storm. But like storms, they do pass. they do pass eventually. And when it comes to the weather, a storm, you don't have to do anything for that storm to go away. Nobody can do anything really to make that tornado go away. We just need to wait it out. And it's kind of similar with a tantrum. Sometimes it's just allowing your child to feel those big feelings, experience the tantrum, and until it passes. Now, we want to make sure that our children are safe. So if your child is hurting himself, and we also want to make sure that your child isn't hurting someone else in those moments. So of course, keeping our children safe, keeping others safe in those moments, those are important. But as best we can, the calmer we are, the faster that storm passes. The calmer we are in those moments, and I know that it's easier said than done. It will pass, I promise you. And that tantrum is not your child's true nature. Your child's true nature is calm, believe it or not, and so is yours. So time, and also sometimes it's helpful to acknowledge that your child is disappointed. But kind of sticking to your limit and being okay with your child just not being happy with that limit. So those are my thoughts on tantrums today. I hope you found it helpful. If you found any value in this video, if you want to give me a like or a comment, it allows more people to get this information. If you want to talk more specifically about your situation and your child and your family, I would love to have that conversation with you. We can set up a time to talk and we can dig a little deeper into your personal situation. Until next time, have a great day, a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.